Welcome to Dear Art Producer, a podcast connecting the photography and video community with art producers. Drawing on her agency experience some years ago, photography agent Heather Elder penned an open letter to art producers discussing the finer points of working with one another. This podcast takes that idea and will introduce you to different art producers, share the stories of their diverse career paths, explore what it means to stay relevant, and examine industry topics such as marketing, estimating, directing, websites, and more.
Hi, welcome to Dear Art Producer. I am your host, Heather Elder, and today we welcome Senior Integrated Producer at 360i New York, Adrienne Darnell. Adrienne started out as a photographer and found her way to advertising, where she's been working for the past 10 years. She still regularly shoots for herself, and I love that she uses film. Her Instagram is beautiful, so we'll make sure she tells us how to find her later. Today, she's here to chat with us about what it means to be an integrated producer. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We're so happy to have you as a guest.
Oh, thanks. You made me sound really fancy.
Yeah.
I appreciate
it. Well, that's what the intro's for, to make you feel fancy and comfortable so that you can live up to it in the interview.
Okay, cool.
You are a photographer, and I was spending some time on your Instagram, and it is really beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow. And you still use film.
Yeah.
Where do you find the film?
I've been hoarding this film for probably like 20 years and collecting it, and most of my fridge, like the two bottom drawers, are not food or lettuce. It's all film. It's pretty embarrassing, but it's beautiful, and I just like having it. I don't shoot that much anymore, but I have like a full camera cabinet. It's a whole thing.
Wow. Yeah. And where did you go to school for that? Or
I did not. I actually went to school to be an English teacher.
Wow. Okay. And, that's bizarre.
In Alabama. And I quickly realized, it was not my jam. And then my grandfather used to build his own cameras.
Oh my gosh.
And there was a whole bunch in their in their house. And I took those, after he passed away, I took those to my house, and I just started tinkering around and figuring out how to shoot them and watching videos online and reading about them, and just taught myself everything about film because I thought it looked cool.
That's so awesome. Is your grandfather still around?
No,
but he's inspired you.
Yeah, I mean, it was like he used to build all these crazy clocks, and I just thought the cameras were cool to look at initially, and I just wanted them in my apartment because I was really into looking at apartment therapy back in the day.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, I want my apartment on a blog. So I was just going to decorate with them, and then I got bored one day. I was like, oh, maybe I can figure out how to shoot these. And I was like, oh, wow, these are really, really pretty. Because I've been trying to shoot with digital and then sitting on Photoshop for hours trying to make it look cool and different and something that I hadn't seen everywhere all the time. And then I realized, film does this naturally.
Yeah.
Here we go.
And where do you print? Like, do you print your stuff yourself? Like, where do you send it out? Do you
I'm lazy when it comes to that. Like, I'll take apart a camera and put it back together for fun all day long. And like I'll soak and dye my film sometimes or burn them in the oven. It's crazy and weird. But then after that, I just don't know what I'm doing. But there was a really cool lab called Indie Photo Lab in Indiana. I sent everything out for them to process, and they're used to like alternative processes and weird colors, so they don't try and shift it or change it to make it look perfect. They're here for like the weirdness.
Yeah.
So they do all the processing, and they'll scan it and send it back to me. I've printed a few things at DeGaulle here in Chelsea. It's very fancy, but I don't do it often.
Yeah. And do you hang your pictures? Do you share them with other people besides Instagram?
I've sold a few prints through Instagram to fund like some vacations before, which was really cool. But it becomes too stressful because it's such a creative outlet for me to kind of just do it and like unwind and have fun and express myself. But then when it becomes a thing like, oh, I'm having to sell these, need to make sure they're perfect, I switch into like producer,
a different mode,
client mode, where I was like, oh, I can't deliver this unless it is pristine, and then I freak out because then it becomes a job and it's not fun anymore.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We talk a little bit on the blog with other guests about the idea that all of your experiences in your life kind of inform who you are at any given moment, right? So you think about everything you've done today and why you're here, I think you have so many insights that you can provide as a photographer yourself to the job that you currently do, which obviously is not rocket science there. Like that, of course, makes sense because we're not choosing to do things that we don't want to do. So it makes sense that you're in the position that you're in. But maybe talk a little bit about what that is as an integrated producer and how being a photographer.
Oh my gosh.
Or start with just kind of explaining what you do.
Yeah, I mean, so how I kind of came into this is I was always just really passionate about, photography for a while. And when I moved to New York, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no idea. I just needed a job. And the first job I got was at Ogilvy as an administrative assistant. And I just liked the environment. I was like, oh, this is super chill. I feel comfortable. I have tattoos. I've always had these really long claw nails.
Those nails are amazing. Oh my gosh. We're going to have to get a picture of them. Mm-hmm.
So I just felt comfortable. And I was like, oh, these people are chill. I feel like I can be myself here and maybe figure out what I want to do eventually. So I was an admin forever and just shooting on the side, kind of just figuring it out. And I started posting my work online. I eventually worked for a CCO, and she saw my personal work and was like, wait, what are you doing? Like, you can do so much more. You have a good eye. It seems like you know people in the community. You should be an art buyer. I was like, I don't know what that is. I'm from Alabama. I didn't know. And she's like, okay, this is what you do. You can start helping our other producers, like, find talent. Mm-hmm. And it just clicked. Like, I don't know. I feel like coming from a photography background, you also understand, like, it's hard. It's hard to get jobs. Like, so a lot of my job now is trying to find new talent. And that's why I feel like I formed a really strong connection with our CCO now because he is an art collector and he loves just finding fresh talent from wherever and trying to get people before they've blown up or whatever. I don't know where I'm going with that, but I feel like I can try and be helpful to people that are just coming into it. Mm-hmm. And like a lot of my friends are photographers, so often I'm like, let me see your book before you go into new meetings. Like, let me help you edit it because I want them to succeed. And a lot of times when we're bidding people, I'm like, I really like this PDF that you sent, but how about swap these around? Yeah. So I feel like coming from that background, it's a little easier because I'm like, I know what they want to see. I know what I want to see personally, and I want to help sell you, like, for you.
Yeah. That's so important to have somebody on the ins. Like, from my point of view, if I'm sharing a photographer with you for a particular project, having you have the eye, not only from a photography point of view, but understanding what your client needs and your agency needs to see. Yeah. It's really helpful because we are asking to do more PDFs and tons of treatments. And sometimes we feel like they go into this black hole maybe, and is anyone really looking at them? But knowing that someone like you is there looking at them and actually going to maybe come back to me with some feedback makes it that much stronger.
Well, I think it's easier to sell in too now at this point. Even like, as everybody knows, as budgets are getting smaller and people are trying to maximize what they have, even if we have no money, it's like, you know what? People still want to work. There are a lot of people that want this job. So I'm asking for treatments even on small budgets now. Yeah. Whereas I don't feel like people used to do that. No. It's like, we're not triple bidding this unless it's over a certain amount. But, I want to do that, and I feel like it helps sell it in better. Yep. Even if I have to make it on my own, sometimes I'll do that as well. Because I'm like, I really want to hire this photographer personally. Maybe he's not capable or she's not capable of pulling this together the way I want to present it. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to sell it because I know that this is the best person, and we're going to figure it out.
Yeah. The other thing we're getting a lot of lately is, I used to get emails that say, ooh, send me links of who you think would be appropriate, right? And I still get that. But now I'm getting, can you send me a PDF of this particular photographer or who you think might be right for this particular job? Which is interesting to me, and I've had some conversations with art producers about it this week. And the point of that, from their point of view, is if I send a bunch of links to my creative, they're going to get distracted. They're going to see something they don't like. It's a little overwhelming. So what they want is a curated, collection of images. And it's making me think about, wow, like the process has gotten so labor intensive. It used to be that I'd get a phone call, I'd send out a portfolio, you'd look at it, you'd call me for the job.
Yeah.
Now there's send me links, send me a PDF, have a creative call, do a treatment. And we're trying to figure out what is the process? How can we make that process easy so that we can get you that information without it being so labor intensive?
Well, I mean, actually it is super labor intensive, but I don't hate it because I feel like from my point of view, like I have more control.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what is helpful is like to maybe already have those things pulled together. So I know certain jobs, it's like there's usually kind of two look and feels for a lot of people. It's like, oh, this, we're going to shoot this and it's going to be kind of bright and happy, or it's going to be moody.
Yeah.
It's usually one of two ways.
Right.
And a lot of photographers do both. But if you go to their website, there's probably more of one look and feel than the other. And I just ran into this last week because I'm bidding a job. And I know that he's capable of it and I want to hire him. And my creatives are like, what's his website? And I didn't want to share it because I knew that they would immediately shut it down because it's not moody enough. Yep. So I was like, wait, let me pull this together for you so that I can control it. Yeah. And I know what you're seeing. So, I mean, I get it. It is more labor intensive, but I think that I don't know really how to combat that unless it's people redoing their websites into like, here's the moody section. Right. Here's the happy section.
Right. Having different landing pages for different projects.
It's crazy. It's so much work, but there's so much competition out there. You really have to hone in on what you're doing. I don't know, man. It's tough.
Well, talk to me about how you find photographers in the first place.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, Instagram has been such a major blessing in that way. And I think it goes back to me like having my Instagram has always been my personal photography on there. So I started connecting with other photographers and then you find other people through them. It's just like, you're going to a rabbit hole. But I've found so many amazing people that have become like close friends. It's crazy. Like Ruben Wu is incredible. And I found him years ago through Flickr, like back in the day.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. We were Flickr friends. We shared we used to send back and forth a Polaroid peel apart film. I sold him a camera once. And then before I got this job here at 360i, I sent his link around. So to get this job, I was like, I really want to work with Minnow, our CCO, who I just admire. He is amazing. And I really want to be here with him. So I was like, how am I going to like make sure that these people are listening to me and they want me to be there and be their art producer? So I just started sending them links like I was already here. I was like, you need to hire this person for this and this person for this. And I was sending them people that I had found through Instagram and through my old school Flickr connections because the creatives aren't looking through those avenues. They're looking at, traditional websites and reps, and which I do that as well. And that's a great source, obviously. But, going back to the budgetary constraints that a lot of people are having now, a lot of times people can't afford, like, I don't want to come old school, people can't afford, like, $15,000 a day rate. Right. You just can't. So a lot of times it's easier, like, oh, well, here's super fresh talent that's like straight out of school. Maybe they just won something at Young Guns this year or whatever. And they're hungry and they want to work. But I found some really interesting freak shows that I'm really passionate about. We shot with, sorry, I'm rambling.
Not at all. No, I think it's really helpful to hear that you're open to using photographers that might be new or different.
Yeah, I mean, it might be challenging sometimes, but also it's super rewarding that you get to help someone and maybe coach them through a process they're not familiar with, or give them a super cool project that helps them build their book. Like HBO is one of our clients. People want to work on that. It's cool. Some of the projects are a lot of fun. So it's exciting for me to do that because people are like, yes, I'm here for it. And it's a lot of work. But
so if you work with a photographer who hasn't done a commercial photo shoot before, has that been a positive experience, or do you prefer them to have some experience?
A little bit of both. I mean, they are really hungry, and that's a positive experience. They come in, they're super passionate. There's something about them a lot of times it's not jaded. Right. And not saying that people are jaded, but we all get that way after a little while. So that's the positive part, but there is more hand-holding involved. So if it's like, you're on a 7-day shoot and there's a ton of talent, that can become, a little bit of a headache. So everybody involved just has to be aware. Your client has to be cool with it. And I think as long as everyone's aware of the process and like, hey, we're hiring this person because they're at our price point, but also because it's new, it's different. They're passionate about this and they're stoked and they want to shoot this job. You just have to like hype up the client and the creatives on that fact. It's like, we're going to have to be a little patient.
You're setting expectations.
Yeah. I think that's just the most important thing. Just manage everyone's expectations throughout the process and it's fine. And for like young photographers that are just trying to get into it, just be passionate and hungry. People want to hire you.
And besides Instagram, what other ways are you connecting with people who want to get to know your agency and you?
Oh gosh. Really, that's like the main thing, the main way I find people now. I've been doing a lot of art projects though too. So I go on this website called It's Nice That. It's really interesting. I've also found some really cool people just by looking at like Nowness or like art-based websites and reaching out through that. I don't go the traditional routes that much anymore.
Do you take meetings with photographers?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Usually I like it to be a one-on-one thing. Like I don't do that many like big group showings anymore. But honestly, for whatever reason, it's hard to get people in a room.
Yeah.
I found that that's a bigger issue. But like I have a lot of my photographer friends and they're like, hey, can I come in and do a show? And I was like, honestly, why don't I set up drinks like after work, or we'll do like a 4:30 and we'll have a cocktail at the office or a beer or whatever. And I'll just bring like 3 producers and like 2 creatives if they're free and just make it more casual and chill. Because at the end of the day, you want to hire somebody that you want to be around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you've said a couple things there. I think one, the idea of the traditional portfolio show has changed a little bit in that it's hard for me as a rep. If I want to go do a portfolio show, it's hard to get in because people are like you are recognizing like, Heather, you're going to come in. I'm going to put you in a room. You're going to spend all this money, all this time, all this effort. And I can't get people to come away from their desks.
Yeah, 5 people have shown up.
Exactly. And unless it's like part of the culture of the agency, that it's a thing that they do, maybe it's once a month they do it. So they're few and far between. And like there's something else kind of happening there, then those tend to work. But the random one here or there sometimes just doesn't work. So in that case, I prefer to come in and show a group portfolio or show you 3 or 4 portfolios of someone that might be people that might be relevant for what you're working on and make it more personalized. Or have my photographer come by. You'd be like, oh my gosh, this person would be really great for HBO. I think you'd like them. Check out their website and then have them come by.
Yeah, it's nicer. And then you like develop a personal relationship. You're like, I remember this person because they were cool.
Yeah. Okay, so you found your photographer and now it's time to bid a job with them. What's the process like for when that happens? Do you have pre-bids call? Like what do you have the creative calls? And then it's, what are you talking about with your clients?
Honestly, like I feel like my process, when I started out, everything was like very, almost rigid. And there was like a format that everyone went by. It's like, oh, we're going to do this. And then the pre-bid and this. I don't really follow that path. I like to, like I said earlier, I like to have a little bit more control. So I will pull together. I usually pick who I want, the creatives, but also the creatives trust me here because I have come in with an art background. I think the first shoot, first big shoot that I did here was for Game of Thrones. It's these that are on the wall with Nicholas Allen Coe, who I found through Instagram, although he is like more well known, 1000%. But there was an idea for this shoot. They wanted to shoot it just like a regular still life on white background, and I burst into a meeting that I wasn't invited to because I heard about it and I was like, oh my gosh, Game of Thrones props. You have to shoot this in this specific way, like dark kind of goth museum. This is what you got to do. Like there's nothing else. And I was sold on it. I don't know who else was sold on it at the time, but I was like, I don't care. I'm just going to do it. So that's usually how I kind of approach everything.
Yeah, and they're beautiful.
Now. It worked out. And so after that happened, the team trusts me. So like, okay, this is our idea. How do you want to do it? Who do you want to hire for this? So I kind of do my own thing for about a week.
Mm-hmm.
I start pulling together PDFs, reaching out, having conversations on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And then I present the PDFs to my creatives. And I'm like, who's your favorite? This is my favorite. This is what I want to do. And then we start the creatives call based on like who they want, who I want. They sell it into the client, and we just kind of force everybody to do what we want.
And do you always triple bid or not so much?
No, not so much anymore. I feel like that was always like a higher budget, and most clients have actually been more chill about it. There used to be like set rules in place about each price point, like even over 50K. I've had some clients who are like, oh, it's over 50K, you have to triple bid. I just don't hear it that much anymore. It's like gotten a little more loose, and I feel like it's become that way because of budgetary constraints. And they're like, you know what, like, I appreciate what you guys are doing. We trust you that you're going to find the best work for this or the best person for this. So do what you need to do.
Yeah, I had a conversation with somebody yesterday about the idea that a really good producer doesn't need 3 bids to compare prices and bring the costs down, because it's about the creative. And if you've been doing this long enough, you know how much something costs.
Yeah.
You could come back to me and say, Heather, your producer does not need 5 prep days on a 1-day shoot.
Yeah.
Like, can we cut that back a little bit? So I think people are starting to push back on the triple bids a little bit. I mean, there's still agencies and clients that require it because they want 3 creative approaches of the same idea, or they want to see that you've done the homework
and
on
then
it.
the cost consultant has to jump in there. And I was like, I'm sorry, where are you pulling these numbers from? These came from 20 years ago.
Yeah. The cost consultants are not always the most relevant, but there are some good ones out there. And I've actually been seeing that, some art producers have become cost consultants.
I think that's actually great.
Which I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I've been getting to know some of the cost consultants, which was never the case before. It was kind of like they were behind the Iron Curtain,
it's very
you never knew who they were. No. You were never allowed to talk to them directly, right? That you'd get an email that was forwarded from someone else. But I feel like we're getting a little bit more access to them. So, when we are working with them, when we do have the direct access, it's much better.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, my projects have become more and more weird. They're not traditional lately, so I feel like I'm in a space where I haven't really had to deal with that much. So like when I started out, it was just solely photography, and that was it, and a lot of lifestyle. And then I came here and I became close with Minnow, and we just really love heavily crafted projects and a lot of art projects. So now there's usually a photography component, and I feel like that's where the integrated thing comes from. It's like, okay, how can we maximize this? Yes, the budget isn't huge, but how can we get the most eyes on this? So let's make something. Let's make a physical item. Let's make it an artist collaboration. Then we're going to do an install somewhere, and it's going to be an art show as well. Then we're going to document it. Let's do a making of.
Right. Yeah.
It's like 10,000 components, and it ends up blowing up into this whole thing that no one ever thought it was going to be. And I feel like at that point, everybody's so excited, and the client's so excited, the agency's so excited on it. It's like, we're not going to nickel and dime it. We're not going to pull in 8,000 opinions that we don't need. This is awesome. You guys just keep blowing it out. So I feel like as long as the agency and the production team and everybody is like really passionate and really into what they're doing, you can kind of just go with it without having people pick apart your budget.
Well, and we talk to our photographers all the time about doing what you just said, right? So you're going to do a test shoot. Great. But maybe why don't you collaborate with someone?
Yes.
And then you're both promoting it, right? So the exposure is exponential. And then, let's do a little behind the scenes thing. What's the story behind it? Oh, let's have a dinner or a show. So we're creating all of this buzz around a project that was originally designed to be a few photographs and maybe some motion. And now we've made it into this much bigger, more interesting thing. And it shows people like you that particular photographer can think like that as well.
Which is amazing because then you're getting more exposure. So it's like when we work with these artists, I'm doing a project right now and we're working with this amazing sculptor person. What are those called? I just say a sculptor?
Oh, yeah, sculptor.
What if it's a lady? Is it sculpturess?
Okay, let's go with that.
That's what I want to call her. Anyway,
Sculptress.
So, but like she's super into the project, so she's going to be posting on her social as well, and she has a massive following.
Yep.
So that's another benefit for us as as an agency, but also the client. And the photographer that I'm hiring to shoot the things after we have them made, he's also amazing and has a decent following.
Right.
So it ends up going with all these avenues that you didn't put paid media behind.
Right.
You're not putting extra money behind it, but people love it and they want to post it anyway. So it's getting like 10 times the exposure than normally would. On that same note, there's this photographer that I really love, Josh Dickinson. Do you know Josh?
I don't. I mean, maybe I know his work, but I'm not familiar with his name.
He and this other photographer, Ahmed Klink, they just shot a campaign together. And they don't normally shoot together, but they worked with this floral artist. And it's like, that's so cool. You guys happen to share a studio, so you just did this for fun. And it's beautiful. It was a shoot for like a laptop or something. But it's like, wow, this isn't normally Josh's style, but it's also not exactly Ahmed's style either. But then together, it's like a whole new thing. So I'm like, interesting. So I'm sending it around to people because I'm like, this is cool. This is like a little duo we could get behind.
Well, and I also feel like, photographers are so used to being in this vacuum of their own work, their own style, their own studio. They're like, and if they start to think about the idea of collaboration, it can go really far for them. And so many of them are starting to think about that. And it helps them get a little bit out of their style or their comfort zone. It gives them more promotion ability, and it gives you attention in ways that you might not have normally gotten it.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I mean, you have to be versatile. Sorry, there's like a lot happening.
Oh, that's okay. It's a busy agency.
There's a lot happening. But yeah, you have to be super versatile. And I've been telling a lot of my friends lately, to that point, you need to start shooting motion too.
Well, that was literally going to be my next question for you. Are you working with a lot of photographers that are also shooting motion?
Yeah. And you kind of have to, because I've noticed on almost every, like I said, I've been doing mostly art projects lately, and there's a photography component to that. But every photo shoot that I've done lately, there's always like a gift. There's something. It might just be majority photography, but they're going to want some sort of moving piece within that. So if you're not shooting motion, you got to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
There was a still life project that I wanted to bid recently, and I wanted to hire one of my friends, Kyle Johnson. He's amazing, and everything he does is beautiful. I was like, do you do motion as well? Because I need it. He's like, no, I don't. I was like, I get it, because he's like, very fancy and editorial, and I don't know if they have much of a need for that very often, but I'm like, wouldn't hurt to try.
Right. I think you have to have the solution. You have to have the motion solution, and it has to be on your website. Because if you go there, and not everybody's going to pick up the phone and ask, right? So if you go there and you don't see it, you are moving on to the next person. There is so much competition out there that you don't have to be everything to every person, but you do have to have the solutions to the type of work that you want to get. And I think every project now has motion to it, and if you're not able to do that or provide the solution, you're going to get passed over.
Yeah, and I mean, like a lot of our clients, so most work now, I feel like most of the work that we're creating is for social, right? And motion pieces do perform better on social. It's not, personally, I love photography. I love still images. It's not really GIFs or not my jam, or boomerangs. But it does perform better, apparently. So everybody wants it. So there's no getting around it. You got to figure it out.
You do have to figure it out. And do your clients tend to know what they want from a motion point of view, or are you guys figuring it out on set? I
mean, I think so. They usually just are like, we want to see some sort of moving piece. What is that? And so I think it's on us to figure that out and how to make it interesting. My favorite things is if there's minimal motion. So we did some illustrations for Absolut. Remember the old school Absolut bottle campaign?
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to bring that back a little bit last year. So we did 3 illustrations with 3 different artists. And in the beginning, we were like, these are just posters or still pieces. One of them ended up being a mural down here in Soho. It was amazing, beautiful. But after the fact, the client was like, oh, we need this to move. I was like, these are illustrations. I mean, one of them was done by Armando Bebe, and he hand draws everything like to scale. It was crazy and huge. It was like, I don't know what we're going to do. So we ended up having to make it move ourselves. But there are these vines. Mm-hmm. So we brought it in-house. We had like our graphic studio people kind of cut it apart and just make minimal things move. And that was cool, and it did really well on social. So I think there's ways around it to where you can figure it out, but I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, I think what we're trying to say is like you really do have to have a motion solution.
Yeah.
And I tell photographers all the time the idea that, just think at first, if you're just learning, think about how do you make a still image move, right? Just get that far and then start getting up to create a scene. Yeah. Show that you can direct a scenario. Because
even if it's minimal, you can make it elegant, and that becomes your style.
Yeah,
you're like, oh, I don't really do motion per se, but I can give you minimal movement, and just call yourself fancy.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah. Call yourself fancy. That's great. Well, let's talk about you a little bit and your personal aesthetic, which I think might be. I'm assuming it would be easy for you to define, but maybe not.
This is interesting. So I know I was talking about the shoot that we did for Game of Thrones with Nick Coate. And I feel like that's where my personal style and aesthetic really started coming through in my shoots. And now everybody's like, oh, this is what Darnell does. Uh-huh. Museum goth, I feel like it's like it really hits the nail on the head. I like things that are very polished, but also dark. Mm-hmm. I think the super happy stuff is great. It's becoming a little played out, if I'm honest. But I like things that are moody. Like, I want to feel some sort of emotion when I look at something. I'll get bored otherwise. And I feel like things that are slightly moody or, dark, whatever you want to call it, it's interesting. I want to stare at it and figure it out.
And how about your job? What's the most challenging aspect of your job?
It used to be really hard, I feel like, and I feel like this happens to most producers really, is to get people to, if you're not a creative, to get them to trust you and like want to know your opinion. And I think it's like you just have to become forceful. But it used to be really difficult, but I've gotten to a place where I just fall so hard for what I wanted and what I wanted to see that now that, okay, we hear you. What becomes difficult is, getting the clients, I think, on board with my personal aesthetic. So I get, not taking things personally. I try to not take something personally when someone isn't into my brand of things. It's like, we did a project once and the client was like, this looks a little dark and gothy. I was like, well, I'm your producer. I'm really sorry, but this is what you're getting. We're going to a funeral. So, that's been challenging, but also, budgets are challenging. We're in, a weird time right now, which is interesting. And I think people are becoming more creative, but advertising just doesn't have the budgets that they used to. We're not going to spend $300K on just a photo shoot. That's all you're getting, So what advice would you have for producers who are kind of just starting out? Be bold, be opinionated, do not be scared. I think that was the biggest lesson for me and was actually made me successful. And I'm really, really happy. I love my job. I love the position I'm in right now. I love my creatives. And it was because I finally started speaking up. And it was horrifying at first, but I had a very strong opinion on what I wanted to see and the type of work that I want to see and the photographers that I want to hire. just be passionate about it. And if people are like, yeah, I don't know, like, okay, I want to do this because of this, show them why you're right. Break into a meeting.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really great advice. I spoke at my college a couple months ago, and it was funny. Not many kids ask many questions, but
yeah, probably because they're scared.
They are. But one person did ask a really great question, I thought, which was, everybody talks about how the industry is changing so much. Like, how do we know as college students, like, how we fit into that? And I said, my answer to him was, we are in a changing industry, absolutely 100%. And we don't exactly know where it's going, or, we're all kind of navigating it and trying to figure it out together. We are actually going to be looking at people like you who are coming in to help shape whatever the next thing is going to be. Mm-hmm. So I gave him the same advice. Have an opinion, be bold, like speak up, and insert yourself into that change and help figure out what that next thing is going to be.
Yeah. I mean, figuring out what the next thing is going to be is like key.
Yep.
So the reason why, a lot of people trust me and come to me, because I'm constantly looking for new talent. And it's just something that, like, I don't have to force myself to do. It's just, I love to look at art and look at new photographers. When I can't sleep at night, I'm being a nerd and looking online for new photographers and new artists and painters or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's how I found, the sculptress. That's how I found her, because I was like browsing on Juxtapose or Colossal or something like that, just looking for freak shows.
I also think it means thinking differently even about process.
Yes.
Right? We don't always have to do everything the exact same way. Yeah. So if we can step back for a second and think, is this the best way to approach this project? That also is, I think, can be pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And like, something else is interesting. I went to the D&AD Awards in London because we won a yellow pencil for the Absolut Love Bottle, the illustration that Armando Bebe did. And I happened to be over there shooting something else for Game of Thrones. And they're like, oh, you won this award. Go and accept it. And I was like, oh yay. It was like my first award ever. I was alone. It's very fancy, but also horrifying. But they made me do this like interview afterwards, and they're like, what is your advice to creatives and producers and people trying to get into the industry? And I was like, really something important for me is to know how to speak to people. Mm-hmm. And like what my CCO calls it is being an artist whisperer. Like,
oh, I love that.
You have to embrace their process, not be super forceful and think of it in like, this is a creative. This is exactly what we want. You have to do this. Like, don't be a brute about it. It's like, what, we're hiring you for this, and I want you to do this. And once I started going that route and just being like, you know what, this is our creative. Obviously, go down this path. But like, what do you want to do? I want to know your ideas. That's when the work started getting better. Because it's like, okay, I want you to feel free to do your thing. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. And I had so many like illustrators and photographers that have told me that like people usually don't do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen often. It's like, for real? And I'm like, yes, do your thing.
Well, and be able to clearly communicate it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, maybe that's where the English teacher comes in.
Yeah. And also that's like why I like to create it. I like to have more control during the beginning of the process. It's like, yes, we'll have our creative call, but then I kind of like to be the sole person dealing with the artist, photographer, or whatever during the whole process, because I've already built that relationship and they trust me. And I feel like, okay, I know how to talk to this person. I want you to be happy. I want you to feel appreciated. I feel like it's super important to make anyone feel appreciated that you're working with.
So
and not
important.
like you're just like hammering them to do what you want them to do.
Well, what are you known for on your team?
So Minnow always is like, Adrienne, or he's like, Darnell, find me a freak show. So I can find some weirdos.
That's great.
That they never heard of before. So it's like, oh, if we have this weird art project, like that's Darnell. So anything like art related, really stylized, that's usually my thing.
And what's your favorite thing to do on a Sunday?
Oh God. Really, I love a bad J-Lo movie. I think they're all probably bad. But like right now, I'm on the Netflix holiday rom-com train. Yeah.
That's great.
They're horrible.
They're horrible, but they're really good to coze into the couch and
it's so good.
Yeah, that's very funny. I would not have guessed that at all.
Yeah. I don't talk about that a lot. But I will not leave. I probably won't go outside all day, and it'll be a marathon of horrifying movies.
That's great. I love that. Okay, and I ask everyone this, but if you weren't an art producer, what would you be?
I would love to run a gallery.
Mm-hmm. That's
and then
great.
I could try and bring in all the freak shows under one space.
Okay, so let's stay in touch because that's my answer when people.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, super cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Where though? Would you do it here or California?
I actually want to do pop-up galleries because I think there's really cool cities around the country that you don't need to open up a gallery and just be in one place, right? Like go to different places and experience the different cultures and bring imagery to, I would want it to be a photography gallery.
Yeah.
But bring different imagery to different cities.
Yeah, so it's almost an experiential thing as well. I have been doing some experiential projects, so I can help.
Oh, good. Yeah. Okay, great. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I think today you have given so much hope to the photographers out there who are doing things a little differently and are hoping to have someone pay attention because they're not doing the, exact thing that everybody else is doing.
Don't be a freak show.
Yeah.
Be weird. Do you.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think in advertising, there are a lot of constraints put on people for many different reasons. And if the people who chose to be photographers because they want to communicate visually and they have something to say, it's a hard space to exist in if you're that person sometimes. So it's nice to know that there are people like you that are paying attention.
Thanks for listening. In an industry where the rules are always changing, it's helpful to hear from those on the front line. Heather Elder is the visionary behind notesfromarepsjournal.com. Visit her website for industry updates, stunning photography and video, and the artist behind the work.